Owen Gray wiped grease from his hands onto an already dirty rag and stepped back to admire his work. The cargo hauler's engine hummed smoothly now, no longer making that grinding noise that had brought its worried captain to his shop 3 days ago. He was good at his job, always had been. Fixing things made sense to him in a way that people rarely did. Waypoint Station Gamma was the kind of place where nobody asked too many questions. It floated at the edge of human space, far enough from Earth that the major corporations ignored it, close enough to alien trade routes that business stayed steady. Owen had chosen it carefully 8 years ago when he needed to disappear. Not from the law exactly, but from questions he did not want to answer and memories that followed him like shadows. His repair shop occupied a corner unit in the lower commercial ring. The rent was cheap because the artificial gravity flickered sometimes, and the air recyclers made everything smell faintly of metal and old socks. Owen did not mind. He had a bed in the back room, a small kitchen unit, and all the tools he needed. That was enough. He was closing up for the day when his communication panel beeped. Owen frowned. He did not get many personal calls. Most of his business came from walk-ins or word of mouth. The station administrator's face appeared on the screen, looking more nervous than Owen had ever seen her. Administrator Walsh was a tough woman who had dealt with smugglers, pirates, and corporate enforcers without breaking a sweat. Right now she looked ready to jump out of her own skin. "Owen Gray?" she asked, even though she clearly knew who he was. "That's me. Something wrong with the station systems. I can take a look tomorrow if you need." "No, nothing like that." Walsh glanced at something off-screen. "We have a situation. There's a ship requesting docking clearance. A big one. Really big. It's not in any of our registries and it won't respond to standard protocols." Owen waited. This did not sound like his problem. Walsh continued, her voice tight. "They sent one message. They're asking for you, specifically for the human mechanic Owen Gray. They want to meet with you." The rag fell from Owen's hand. His heart started beating faster, though he could not say why. Nobody knew he was here. He had made sure of that. He had used his real name because fake identities drew attention, but he had buried his past deep. "No forwarding addresses. No contacts maintained, nothing. Who are they?" Owen asked quietly. "They won't say. Security is ready to deny docking. But this ship could probably take apart the entire station if it wanted to." "I need to know, Owen. Who are these people? What do they want with you?" Owen's mind raced. 8 years was a long time. He had left Frost Vale during the chaos of the corporate raid, and as far as he knew, no one had ever connected him to what happened in those frozen mountains. He had been careful. "So careful, I don't know," he said honestly. "But I'll meet with them. Better than having them tear the station apart looking for me." Walsh looked relieved and worried at the same time. "Security will be standing by. Dock 7, 1 hour. Please tell me you're not some kind of criminal." "I'm not," Owen said. "I'm just a mechanic." He closed the connection and sat down heavily on his work stool. His hands were shaking slightly. Without meaning to, his mind drifted back to a time he tried hard not to think about. Cold. Everything had been so cold on Frost Vale. The mining colony had been a terrible place to work, but the pay had been good and Owen had needed to save money. He remembered the ice cavern, the collapsed tunnel, the sound of labored breathing that had made him investigate when he should have walked away, white scales gleaming in his flashlight beam, golden eyes filled with pain and fear and something else. Intelligence. Awareness. Owen shook his head. That was 8 years ago. The dragon had flown away into the mountains and Owen had never seen it again. There was no way this could be connected. Dragons did not have spaceships. The scaled clans kept to themselves and humans mostly left them alone. Everyone knew they were dangerous and territorial. But those eyes. He remembered those eyes. An hour later, Owen stood in the docking bay with a dozen security officers pointing weapons at the massive airlock. The ship on the other side was unlike anything Owen had seen before. Human ships were blocky and practical. This thing was elegant, all curves and strange angles like it had been grown instead of built. The airlock hissed open. Tall figures emerged, moving with fluid grace. They wore armor that looked ceremonial, all engraved metal and flowing cloth. Their faces were elongated, reptilian with scales that caught the light. Dragons, scaled clan members. Owen's breath caught in his throat. They moved aside and another figure stepped forward. This one wore no armor, just simple robes that somehow looked more regal than any crown. The scales were pure white, so bright they almost seemed to glow under the station lights. Golden eyes found Owen across the docking bay and held his gaze. Owen stopped breathing. He knew those eyes. He had seen them filled with pain in a frozen cave. He had seen them watch him with confusion as he splinted a broken wing. He had seen them shine with something that might have been gratitude before their owner flew away into a snowstorm. The white dragon walked forward slowly. The security officers tensed, but the dragon ignored them completely. It stopped a few feet from Owen and spoke, its voice deep and surprisingly gentle. "You may not recognize me, grown, Owen Gray, but I never forgot you." The dragon's golden eyes never left his face. "My name is Prince Ashwin of the Scaled Clans. 8 years ago, you saved my life." The wind cut through Owen's jacket like knives made of ice. Frostvale was not a planet anyone chose to live on. People came here because they needed money badly enough to freeze for it, and they left as soon as they could afford a ticket out. The mining company paid well because they had to. Nobody stayed in this frozen hell for minimum wage. Owen had been on Frostvale for 6 months, working as a maintenance engineer for Kellerman Mining. It was not a good company. Owen knew that within his first week. They cut corners on safety. They ignored environmental regulations. They had permits for some areas but mined wherever they found valuable minerals, permits or not. But Owen needed the money and kept his head down. He fixed equipment, maintained the heating systems, and tried not to think too hard about what the company was doing. It was not his job to be the conscience of a corporation. That changed on a night when the temperature dropped to -40, and Owen had to do an emergency repair on a heating unit in the outer tunnels. He was on his way back when he heard it. A sound like breathing, but wrong. Too deep? Too slow? Coming from a collapsed section of tunnel that had caved in during yesterday's blast. Owen should have kept walking. His shift was over. Whatever was making that noise was not his problem. But he stopped anyway. He always stopped for things that were not his problem. It was one of his worst habits. Owen climbed over the rubble pile, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. The breathing got louder. Then he saw it, and his brain struggled to make sense of what his eyes were showing him. A dragon. An actual dragon. Not the tiny lizard-like creature some planets had, but a real dragon from the Scaled Clans. It was young, maybe not even fully grown, but still bigger than Owen. And it was trapped under a massive piece of ice and rock that had pinned one of its wings. The scales were white. Pure white, like fresh snow. Owen had seen pictures of Scaled Clan members before, but never a white one. The dragon's eyes opened as his light hit them. Golden eyes, bright with pain and fear. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Owen knew he should leave. The Scaled Clans did not like other species, especially not humans. They kept to their own territory and did not welcome visitors. This dragon was in protected space. Kellerman Mining was not supposed to be here at all. The dragon made a sound, low and hurt. Its trapped wing was bent at a wrong angle. Broken, Owen realized. Without help, this creature would die here in the dark and cold. Owen made a decision that would change his life. He climbed down into the collapsed tunnel. The dragon watched him approach with wary eyes. When Owen got close, it tried to move away but could not. The ice had it pinned too securely. Owen held up his hands, showing he had no weapons. "Easy," he said softly. "I'm going to help you. This is going to hurt, but I'll be as careful as I can." The dragon probably did not understand his words, but something in Owen's tone must have communicated his intent. It stopped struggling and watched him with those incredible golden eyes. It took Owen 3 hours to free the dragon. He used every tool in his kit, carefully cutting away ice and shifting rocks. The dragon stayed still, though Owen could see it trembling with pain. When the last piece of debris came away, the dragon tried to stand and collapsed. Its broken wing dragged uselessly, and it was clearly weak from cold and hunger. Owen knew he could not leave it here. If the mining company found it, they would either kill it or sell it. White scales probably meant it was rare. Rare meant valuable. Valuable meant dangerous for the dragon. He also could not contact the Scaled Clans. Owen had no idea how to reach them, and if he tried through official channels, Kellerman Mining would find out. They would take the dragon before any rescue could arrive. That left only one option. Owen had to hide the dragon himself. Getting a dragon back to his quarters without anyone seeing was not easy. Owen waited until the shift change when the tunnels were busiest and most chaotic. He guided the limping dragon through side passages and maintenance corridors. Twice they had to hide while workers passed by. The dragon seemed to understand they needed to stay quiet. Owen's quarters were small, just a bed, a storage unit, and a tiny kitchen area. The dragon barely fit. It curled up in the corner, watching Owen with exhausted eyes. Over the next 2 weeks, Owen became a thief. He stole food from the company cafeteria, taking extra portions and hiding them in his jacket. He used his own rations to supplement what he stole. The dragon was always hungry. Owen did not know what dragons normally ate, so he gave it everything he could get. Meat, vegetables, even protein bars. The dragon ate it all. The broken wing was the hardest problem. Owen was not a doctor. He knew machines, not bodies, but he understood structure and mechanics. A wing was just a frame with covering. Bones were like metal struts. They needed to be set correctly to heal straight. Using materials from his workshop, Owen created a splint. He wrapped the wing carefully, keeping it in what he hoped was the right position. The dragon endured the process without complaint, though Owen could see pain in those golden eyes. Slowly, the dragon recovered. It started moving around more. Its scales, which had been dull when Owen found it, began to shine. It watched Owen constantly, and Owen talked to it while he worked on projects in his quarters. He did not know if the dragon understood, but it seemed to listen. They communicated without words. Owen learned the dragon's moods from the way it held its head and the position of its tail. The dragon learned to trust Owen's touch. When Owen checked the splint, the dragon would hold still. When Owen brought food, the dragon would make a soft rumbling sound that might have been gratitude. Owen never named the dragon. It felt wrong, like claiming ownership of something wild and free. After 2 weeks, the dragon was strong enough to move its wings slightly. Not enough to fly, but enough to stretch. Owen knew it was getting restless. It needed to go home, wherever that was. One night, Owen woke to find the dragon standing by the door. Its golden eyes were fixed on him. Owen got up and opened the door without a word. They walked together through the quiet corridors to an emergency exit that led outside. The frozen wind hit them immediately. The dragon spread its wings, testing them. The broken one still did not work right, but it was healing. The dragon turned to look at Owen one last time. It lowered its head and gently pressed it against Owen's chest. Owen put his hand on the white scales, feeling their warmth. Then the dragon stepped outside and, with visible effort, launched itself into the air. It flew awkwardly, struggling with the damaged wing, but it flew. Owen watched until the white shape disappeared into the darkness and swirling snow. He never saw the dragon again. 3 days later, authorities raided Kellerman Mining for illegal operations. In the chaos, Owen slipped away. He took a transport off Frost Vale and eventually ended up on Waypoint Station Gamma, where no one asked about his past, until now. Owen stared at the white dragon standing before him and felt the entire universe tilt sideways. Prince Ashwin. The young dragon he had saved was a prince, royalty. Owen's legs suddenly felt weak, and he was glad there was a cargo crate nearby to lean against. The security officers looked confused, their weapons still raised, but their resolve clearly shaken. Administrator Walsh had gone pale. Nobody knew what to do when a prince from the scaled clans showed up asking for a random mechanic. "I think," Owen managed to say, his voice rough, "we should probably talk somewhere more private." Prince Ashwin inclined his head gracefully. "I would appreciate that. My companions will remain with the ship. They understand this is a personal matter." Walsh quickly arranged for them to use one of the station's conference rooms. The security team wanted to come along, but one look from Ashwin made them reconsider. Dragons might not have weapons visible, but they did not need them. Everyone knew what the scaled clans were capable of when provoked. The conference room was small and plain, with a table and a few chairs that were definitely not designed for dragon anatomy. Ashwin did not seem to mind. He settled himself with surprising grace, his tail curling around his feet, his white scales gleaming under the harsh station lighting. Owen sat across from him, still trying to process everything. The young dragon he remembered had been scared and hurt. This dragon radiated confidence and authority. 8 years had changed them both. "You look well," Ashwin said, breaking the silence. "I am glad. I have thought about you often over these years." "I thought you were dead," Owen admitted. "That wing was badly broken. When you flew away, I was not sure you would make it. I nearly did not." Ashwin's golden eyes held sadness. "I flew for 2 days before my people found me. By then, infection had set in. The healers said if I had been in the cold much longer, I would have died. Your splint saved my wing. It held the bones correctly so they could heal. Owen felt relief wash through him. He had worried about that dragon for months after leaving Frost Vale. Knowing it had survived, had made it home safely, lifted a weight he had been carrying without realizing it. I am glad, Owen said simply. I did not know you were a prince. I just knew you needed help. That is precisely why I am here. Ashwin leaned forward slightly. Do you understand what white scales mean among my people? Owen shook his head. I figured they were rare. I never saw any pictures of white dragons before. They appear once every few generations. It is a genetic trait that marks royalty. I am the only white-scaled dragon in the current royal family. That makes me very valuable. Ashwin's voice turned bitter. Valuable enough to kidnap. The pieces fell into place in Owen's mind. The traffickers. They took you deliberately. Yes, I was young and foolish. I left the protected territories without proper guards, wanting to see the galaxy beyond our borders. They were waiting. They stunned me, bound my wings, and transported me to Frost Vale. They planned to sell me to collectors who keep rare beings as trophies. Owen felt sick. He had heard about such collectors but never imagined anyone would be bold enough to kidnap royalty from the scaled clans. I managed to break free during transport, Ashwin continued, but I was injured and disoriented. I flew blindly and crashed in those mountains. Then you found me. Why did not you tell me who you were? I could have tried to contact your people. Ashwin made a sound that might have been a laugh. I was terrified you would. My kidnappers had told me humans were working with them. I believed them. When you started helping me instead of hurting me, I did not know what to think. I was afraid if you knew I was royalty, you would change, become like them, seeing only value instead of a person. Owen understood that. He had seen what people did for money. It brought out the worst in most folks. When I finally made it home, I tried immediately to find you, Ashwin said. I only knew your first name and that you were human. My father sent search parties to Frost Vale, but the mining colony was abandoned. The records were destroyed. There was no trace of you. I left during the raid. Seemed like a good time to disappear. I searched for 8 years, Owen Gray. I used every resource available to me. Nothing worked. Then, 3 months ago, one of our scouts found something in the wreckage of the mining colony. A tool with an identification number. Your identification number. Owen remembered losing that wrench. He had been too focused on keeping the dragon hidden to notice it was missing. It took time to trace that number through human bureaucratic systems. Many of your agencies do not share information easily. But eventually we found you here on Waypoint Station Gamma. So you came yourself, Owen said. Why? You could have sent a message. Because I owe you a life debt. Ashwin spoke the words with weight, like they meant something profound. In our culture, when someone saves the life of a scaled clan member, especially royalty, a debt is created. It is not a simple thank you. It is an obligation that must be fulfilled. Owen shifted uncomfortably. You do not owe me anything. I just did what anyone should do. But they do not. Ashwin's voice was gentle but firm. That mining colony had dozens of workers. Any of them could have found me. Most would have killed me or sold me. You risked your job, your safety, and possibly your life to save a stranger from a species your people fear. That is not something anyone would do. That is something special. Owen did not feel special. He felt overwhelmed. What does this life debt mean exactly? It means I am honor-bound to grant you anything within my power. Wealth, land, titles, knowledge, protection. My father, the king, has given his blessing. Whatever you desire, if I can provide it, it is yours. The weight of those words settled over Owen like a heavy blanket. People were already gathering outside the conference room. He could see them through the windows, station residents pressing close, trying to hear what was happening. News traveled fast in small communities. I need time to think, Owen said. Of course. Ashwin stood gracefully. I will remain docked for as long as necessary. Please take whatever time you need. This debt has waited 8 years. It can wait longer. As Ashwin left the conference room, his entourage falling into formation around him, Owen stayed seated. He put his head in his hands and tried to figure out how his simple, quiet life had suddenly become so complicated. Outside, he could hear Administrator Walsh already fielding questions from excited residents. Word would spread through human space quickly. The mechanic who saved a dragon prince. The man owed a life debt by the scaled clans. Owen had spent 8 years avoiding attention. Now he was going to be the center of it. He had wanted a quiet life. The universe, it seemed, had other plans. Owen tried to open his shop the next morning like everything was normal. That lasted about 10 minutes before the first reporter showed up. Then another, then 5 more. By midday, Owen had locked his door and retreated to his back room while journalists shouted questions through the metal barrier. News of Prince Ashwin's visit had spread through human space like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know about the mechanic who saved Dragon royalty. Networks were offering money for exclusive interviews. Corporate representatives were sending messages every few minutes. Even government officials from Earth were trying to contact him. Owen ignored all of it. He sat in his small back room drinking coffee that had gone cold and tried to think. A knock on his back door made him jump. Owen approached cautiously and checked the security screen. Prince Ashwin stood there alone, his white scales unmistakable even in the dim corridor lighting. Owen opened the door. "How did you get back here without anyone seeing?" "I am very good at not being seen when I choose." Ashwin slipped inside. In the small space, he seemed even larger than before. "I apologize. I did not anticipate this level of attention. It is not your fault." Owen gestured to the only other chair, though Ashwin remained standing. "I should have realized saving a prince would cause problems. Not problems, opportunities." Ashwin looked uncomfortable saying it. "That is what everyone keeps telling me. Representatives from your governments have been contacting my ship. They want to discuss diplomatic opportunities, trade agreements, cultural exchanges. They see my life debt as a chance to improve relations between humans and the scaled clans." Owen felt a headache building behind his eyes. "They want me to ask for political favors." "Yes. I have been advised by my own counselors that whatever you request will set a precedent. If you ask for trade agreements, it opens doors for commerce. If you ask for territory, it establishes humans can hold land in our space. Every option has consequences. That is a lot of pressure for a simple mechanic." Ashwin finally settled himself, his tail wrapping around his feet. "You keep calling yourself simple. But simple people do not risk everything for strangers. They do not spend 2 weeks nursing an injured dragon while stealing food to keep it alive. They do not create medical splints from spare parts that professional healers later admitted were ingeniously designed." Owen looked away, embarrassed. Anyone with basic engineering knowledge could have done that. But they did not. You did. Ashwin's voice was gentle. "I have spent 8 years thinking about those 2 weeks. Do you know what I remember most?" Owen shook his head. "You talked to me. Constantly. You told me about your day, about the machinery you were fixing, about the terrible food in the cafeteria. You treated me like a person, not a thing to be hidden or a problem to be solved. You gave me dignity when I had none." Something in Owen's chest tightened. He remembered those one-sided conversations. He had felt foolish talking to a dragon that probably understood nothing. Apparently, he had been wrong. "My people are powerful," Ashwin continued, "but we are also isolated. We do not trust easily and others do not trust us. We are seen as dangerous, territorial, aggressive. Often we are those things. But that is because we have learned that trust is dangerous." "I am not sure where you are going with this," Owen admitted. "I am trying to explain that what you did was extraordinary not because you saved my life, but because you showed me something I had never experienced before. Kindness without agenda. Help without expectation of reward. You did not know I was valuable. You just knew I was hurt." A commotion outside made them both tense. Voices arguing, someone demanding access. Administrator Walsh's voice rose above the others, telling people to back off or she would have them removed from the station. "This is getting out of hand," Owen muttered. "I cannot even leave my own shop." "Come to my ship," Ashwin suggested. "It is quiet there. We can talk properly and you will have time to think without all this noise." Owen considered it. The idea of leaving the station, even temporarily, was appealing. But he worried about what people would think, what they would assume. I am not good with politics, he warned. I do not know how to play these games. Good, Ashwin said firmly. I do not want you to play games, I want you to be honest. That is why I came personally instead of sending ambassadors. This life debt is not political, it is personal. That night, Owen packed a small bag and quietly left through a maintenance tunnel Ashwin had mapped out. They reached the docking bay where Ashwin's ship waited. The vessel was even more impressive. Up close, all elegant curves and strange geometry that somehow looked organic. Inside, the ship was beautiful. Corridors seemed to flow rather than intersect. Lighting came from strips that glowed with warm colors. Everything felt alive somehow, like the ship was a creature in itself. Ashwin's crew treated Owen with cautious respect. They were clearly unsure what to make of a human who had saved their prince, but they were unfailingly polite. A dragon with deep blue scales showed Owen to guest quarters that were far nicer than anywhere he had lived in years. Over the next 3 days, Owen stayed aboard the ship while chaos continued on the station. He watched news reports showing speculation about what he would ask for. Experts debated the political implications. His face was everywhere, pictures that someone had dug up from old employment records. Ashwin visited often. They talked about everything except the life debt. Ashwin wanted to know about human culture, about Owen's life before Frost Vale, about why he had become a mechanic. Owen asked about the scaled clans, about their history and beliefs. Owen learned that the scaled clans valued honor above almost everything else. Family was sacred. Debts were serious business, not just words but binding obligations. Breaking a promise was one of the worst things someone could do. He also learned that Ashwin had been pushing for more contact with other species for years. The prince believed isolation made his people weaker, not stronger. But conservative factions in the clan leadership resisted change. My father understands, Ashwin explained during one long conversation. But he must balance tradition with progress. Change cannot come too quickly or it will be rejected. And my life debt sits in the middle of all this, Owen realized. Yes, whatever you choose will affect more than just us. I wish it were simpler. I wish I could simply thank you and we could be friends without all this weight. Owen thought about that word. Friends. It felt right. Despite the 8 years between their last meeting and now, despite everything that made them different, there was a connection between them. Maybe it had been forged in that frozen cave, or during the quiet nights when Owen had talked to an injured dragon. Maybe it had always been there waiting. I think I know what I want, Owen said slowly. But I need to be sure I am asking for the right thing. Ashwin's golden eyes brightened. Tell me, whatever it is. If I can grant it, I will. Owen took a deep breath. His decision would change everything. But then again, saving a white dragon in a frozen cave had already done that 8 years ago. He just had not realized it until now. Owen stood before Prince Ashwin in the ship's observation deck, where massive windows showed the stars stretching endlessly in every direction. He had spent 3 days thinking, and now he knew what he wanted. It was not what anyone expected. I do not want money, Owen began, or land or titles or political favors. Ashwin waited, patient and attentive. His golden eyes reflected the starlight. I want to understand, Owen continued. Your people, your culture, your world. I want to visit the scaled clans and learn what makes you different from humans, not as a spy or a diplomat, but as someone who wants to know. Silence filled the observation deck. Ashwin's expression was unreadable, and Owen worried he had somehow offended the prince. Then Ashwin made a sound that Owen realized was laughter. Of all the things you could have asked for, you chose knowledge? Ashwin's voice held warmth and something that might have been joy. Not wealth that could set up your family for generations? Not political power that could make you important in human space? I do not have family, Owen said simply. And I never wanted to be important. But I have always wanted to understand why people do what they do. Your people interest me. The way you value honor. The way you approach debts and obligations. It is different from humans. I want to learn why. Ashwin moved closer, his presence overwhelming in the best way. Do you understand what you are asking? No human has visited the clan homeworld in over a century. My people do not welcome outsiders. Even with my sponsorship, you would face suspicion and hostility. I know. But I think that is exactly why I should ask for this. Everyone else wants something from you. Trade land alliances. Those things are transactional. They do not build real understanding between people. If humans and the scaled clans are ever going to be more than cautious neighbors, someone has to try to bridge that gap. And you think you can do this? A simple mechanic? Owen smiled slightly. You keep using that word like I do. Yes, I am simple. Maybe that is exactly what makes me the right person. I do not have political agendas. I do not represent governments or corporations. I am just someone who wants to learn. Ashwin was quiet for a long moment. His tail moving in what Owen had learned was a sign of thought. My father will have concerns. The Conservative Council will object. But if this is truly what you want, I will make it happen. It is. Then pack whatever you need from the station. We leave for Dawn's Reach tomorrow. The next day passed in a blur. Owen returned to Waypoint Station Gamma briefly to close his shop and say goodbye to Administrator Walsh. She looked at him like he was crazy. You are leaving everything behind to visit dragons? She asked. Owen, you could have asked for enough money to buy this entire station. I do not need a station. I need to understand something that has bothered me for 8 years. Why did that dragon trust me? Why did I feel compelled to help it? Maybe if I understand the scaled clans better, I will understand myself better too. Walsh shook her head but helped him arrange storage for his tools and equipment. You are either very wise or very foolish. I'm not sure which. Maybe both, Owen admitted. The journey to Dawn's Reach took 2 weeks. The ship traveled through jump points Owen did not know existed, cutting across space in ways human vessels could not manage. During the journey, Ashwin taught Owen the basics of clan language and customs. Never touch someone's tail without permission. That is deeply personal, Ashwin explained, and if someone offers you food, accepting it is accepting their hospitality. Rejecting it is a grave insult. Owen absorbed everything like a dry sponge soaking up water. He had always been good at learning mechanical systems, but learning social systems was harder. Ashwin was patient, correcting Owen's pronunciation and explaining nuances of behavior. The crew gradually warmed to Owen. At first, they had been stiffly polite. As days passed and they saw Owen genuinely trying to learn their language and customs, they began including him in conversations. A young dragon named Ren took particular delight in teaching Owen curse words that Ashwin insisted he forget immediately. You will get yourself challenged to a duel if you say that to the wrong person, Ashwin warned, but his eyes held amusement. When the ship finally dropped out of jump space near Dawn's Reach, Owen pressed his face to the observation window and stared. The planet was breathtaking. Blues and greens swirled with whites, but there was something else too. A shimmer in the atmosphere that made the whole world seem to glow. The crystal formations in our mountain ranges reflect light in unique ways, Ashwin explained, standing beside Owen. That glow has inspired poets for thousands of years. As they descended through the atmosphere, Owen saw cities unlike anything in human space. Buildings grew from the landscape rather than imposing on it. Towers spiraled upward, their surfaces catching light. Dragons flew between structures, their scales flashing colors. They landed at what Ashwin called the Royal Complex. Owen expected something like a palace, but it was more like a series of interconnected buildings that flowed together naturally. Gardens filled with plants Owen did not recognize surrounded everything. Ashwin led Owen through corridors where other dragons stopped to stare. Some looked curious. Others looked hostile. Owen kept his eyes respectful and his posture open, the way Ashwin had taught him. They entered a vast chamber where a dragon even larger than Ashwin waited on a raised platform. His scales were deep red, almost the color of dried blood, and his golden eyes held the weight of centuries. King Ashitar, Ashwin's father. Owen had practiced the formal greeting 100 times during the journey. He still felt nervous as he executed the bow, holding it for the required count, then straightening and meeting the king's gaze directly, because looking away would suggest fear or dishonesty. Owen Gray. The king's voice rumbled through the chamber. My son tells me you saved his life and asked nothing in return but understanding. Yes, your majesty. I want to learn about your people. Why? The question was blunt. Owen appreciated that. Because 8 years ago a young dragon trusted me when it had no reason to. I have thought about that trust ever since. I want to understand what made it possible. The king studied Owen for a long time. The silence stretched uncomfortably. Then the king inclined his head slightly. You may stay, learn what you can. But understand this, Owen Gray. My son has declared a life debt. That makes you important to our people, but it does not make you one of us. Respect our ways, honor our customs, and you will be safe. Disrespect us, and not even Ashwin's protection will save you. I understand, Owen said. Good. The king's expression softened slightly. Welcome to Dawn's Reach, friend of clans. May your time here bring you the understanding you seek. As Ashwin led Owen from the throne room, Owen felt the weight of dozens of eyes on his back. He was the first human on this world in over a century. Every move he made would be watched, judged, analyzed. But instead of fear, Owen felt excitement. He had spent 8 years fixing machines and hiding from his past. Now he had a chance to do something that mattered. He was going to build a bridge between two species, one conversation at a time. 3 months after arriving on Dawn's Reach, Owen sat in a garden watching young dragons practice aerial maneuvers above the crystal towers. He had learned more in those months than in years of solitary living on Waypoint Station Gamma. Not just about the scaled clans, but about himself. Ashwin found him there, settling beside him with the easy familiarity they had developed. The prince had become not just Owen's guide, but his genuine friend. The Council of Elders wants to meet with you, Ashwin said. My father has proposed something unusual. Owen had learned that unusual things in clan culture could be either very good or very bad. Should I be worried? That depends on how you feel about staying here permanently. Owen's heart skipped. Over the past months, he had fallen in love with Dawn's Reach. The beauty of the world, yes, but more than that. The people. Despite initial suspicion, many dragons had begun seeking Owen out. They asked questions about humans, about Earth, about why Owen had saved Ashwin. His honest answers surprised them. What does the king propose? Owen asked carefully. A new position. Ambassador of Understanding, he calls it. You would not negotiate treaties or trade agreements. Those are for professional diplomats. Instead, you would foster cultural exchange. Help humans and scaled clans understand each other as people, not just political entities. Owen thought about that. How would that work? You would live here part of the year, on human worlds the rest of the time. You would create programs where young people from both species could learn from each other, not formal education but real interaction, the kind that builds friendships instead of just alliances. That sounds like something bigger than one person can do. It is, Ashwin agreed. That is why my father wants to start small. A few exchange students at first. See what works, what fails. Build slowly, but it needs someone to guide it, someone both species can trust. I am a mechanic, not a diplomat. Ashwin made that sound that Owen had learned was amusement. You keep saying that, but you have done more for clan-human relations in 3 months than diplomats accomplished in decades. Do you know why? Owen shook his head. Because you do not try to be impressive. You ask simple questions and actually listen to the answers. You share meals with scholars and guards with equal respect. You fixed Ren's wing brace last week without being asked, just because you saw it was causing discomfort. These small things matter more than grand gestures. Owen had not thought of his actions as important. He just did what seemed right. The council is meeting tomorrow, Ashwin continued. They will ask if you accept this position. Whatever you decide, the life debt will be considered fulfilled. You have already given more than anyone expected by simply being here, being yourself. That night, Owen could not sleep. He walked through the royal complex, which was quiet in the late hours. Guards nodded to him as he passed. He had learned their names, learned about their families. They were no longer faceless protectors, but people he knew. He ended up in the workshop Ashwin had arranged for him. Owen had not been able to stop being a mechanic just because he was on an alien world. He fixed things. It was who he was. The workshop had become his refuge, filled with tools both human and clan-made. On his workbench sat a project he had been developing, a communication device that could translate between human and clan languages in real time. Current translators required careful pronunciation and often missed context. Owen's design focused on natural conversation flow. It was not finished. Might never be finished, but working on it made him feel useful. Still awake? A voice from the doorway. King Ashtar stood there, his massive form barely fitting through the entrance. Owen had never been alone with the king before. He stood quickly, starting to bow, but the king waved him off. No formalities. Not here. The king approached the workbench. May I see what you are working on? Owen explained the translator project, the problems he was trying to solve. The king listened with interest, asking intelligent questions. Owen had learned that the king was far more than a figurehead. He was brilliant, deeply knowledgeable about both history and technology. "My son says you have doubts about tomorrow's meeting," the king said. "Finally. I do not know if I am the right person for what you are asking." "You are precisely the right person." The king's voice was firm. "Do you know why? Because you have doubts. Someone certain they could bridge two civilizations would fail immediately. Humility is required for this work. Respect for both sides, understanding that you will make mistakes. I will definitely make mistakes. Yes, but you will learn from them. More importantly, you will teach others to learn from them too." The king paused. 8 years ago, my son disappeared. We feared the worst. When we found him injured but alive, he told us about a human who helped him. He spoke of you often, how you talked to him like a person, how you shared your food when you had little, how you never asked for anything in return. The king's golden eyes held Owen's gaze. That is when I realized that peace between our peoples would not come from treaties or trade agreements. It would come from individuals choosing kindness over fear. You made that choice in a frozen cave. Tomorrow I'm asking you to make it again, but on a larger scale. The next day, Owen stood before the Council of Elders. Dragons of every color filled the chamber, their eyes watching him with mixed expressions. Some curious, some skeptical, some openly hostile. King Ashitar presented the proposal. A permanent position as Ambassador of Understanding. A home on Dawn's Reach. Resources to develop cultural exchange programs. The authority to travel between human and clan space freely. The elders debated in their own language, fast and heated. Owen caught some words he had learned, but not enough to follow the full conversation. Finally, the king called for silence. "Owen Gray," the king said formally. "The council has questions. First, why do you believe humans and scaled clans should have closer relations?" Owen took a breath. "Because fear comes from not knowing. When I found Prince Ashwin, I was afraid. I had heard stories about the scaled clans. Dangerous, territorial, hostile. But then I looked at him, really looked, and I saw a person who was hurt and scared, just like I would be in that situation. That moment changed me." "And what would you teach our young people about humans?" another elder asked. "That we are complicated. We can be kind or cruel, brave or cowardly, generous or selfish. Often all of those things in the same day. Just like you. Our scales are different, but underneath we want the same things. Safety for our families, meaning in our lives, connection with others." A white-scaled elder, ancient and intimidating, spoke next. "Why should we trust you? One human cannot represent all humans." "You should not trust me to represent all humans," Owen said honestly. "I can only represent myself. But maybe that is enough to start. Maybe one friendship, one honest conversation, one small understanding can grow into something larger. I cannot promise success. I can only promise to try." The debate continued for hours. Finally, the vote came. It was not unanimous, but it was enough. The king smiled and formally offered Owen the position. "I accept," Owen said. "I will do my best to honor the trust you place in me." 5 years later, Owen stood on a balcony overlooking Dawn's Reach and watched the sunset paint the crystal towers in shades of gold and red. Behind him, a group of human students laughed with their clan guides, making plans for tomorrow's outing. The exchange program had grown beyond his wildest hopes. Ashwin landed beside him, his white scales gleaming. The prince had taken on more responsibilities in leading the clans, but he still made time for his friend. "Remembering how this started?" Ashwin asked. "Always," Owen said. "Sometimes I still cannot believe that freezing night on Frost Vale led to all this. My father says history turns on small moments. Acts of kindness that seem meaningless at the time but ripple outward. Is that what this is? A ripple?" "More like a wave now," Ashwin said with amusement. 3 exchange programs running, 4 more in development. Clan scholars visiting Earth universities. Human engineers working with our builders. You started something significant, Owen. "We started it," Owen corrected. "I just helped a dragon who needed it." "You chose to come find me. You convinced your people to take a chance on a human mechanic." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge as darkness fell. Owen thought about his old life on Waypoint Station Gamma, fixing ships and keeping to himself. That life seemed impossibly distant now. "Do you ever regret it?" Ashwin asked quietly. Giving up your quiet life? Owen considered the question seriously. No, I thought I wanted quiet because I was hiding. From my past, from failure, from trying and getting hurt. But what we are building here, this matters. For the first time in my life, I feel like I am doing something that might outlast me. It will, Ashwin said with certainty. There are children now, human and clan, who are growing up seeing each other as friends instead of strangers. That will change the future, Owen smiled. All because I could not walk past someone who needed help. All because you chose compassion over fear, Ashwin corrected. That is the lesson I hope spreads through both our peoples. Not that we should trust blindly, but that we should look past scales and skin to see the person underneath. The stars shone brightly above dawn's reach. Somewhere among them, humans and dragons were learning to understand each other, one small conversation at a time. Owen had started as a mechanic trying to fix a broken wing. Now he was helping fix something much larger, the broken connection between two civilizations. He had saved a dragon in a frozen cave 8 years ago. That dragon had returned and offered him the galaxy. But the greatest gift was not the position or the honor. It was the friendship, the purpose, and the knowledge that kindness, even in small moments, could change everything. Owen Gray had learned that some debts could never truly be repaid because they became something more valuable than obligation. They became foundations for understanding, bridges between worlds, and proof that compassion was not weakness but the strongest force in the universe.